Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well out there. If you recall in the last video where we reviewed the Define 7 Compact in white, I mentioned that there was a setup that was built around that case and the build that went into it. Now specifically, we're going to be looking at my personal setup today. This is a setup that I've been honestly trying to build for quite some time now, but either the resources weren't available or honestly the parts just may not have been available at the time I had the resources. So this is something, again, I've been working on for a while. It is a setup that is intended for gaming and content creation, so keep all that in mind as I go over some of the parts that we'll be showcasing today. Now also, all of the parts that we will discuss, including the stuff in the build and all of the setup parts, will be linked down in the video's description. There will be a mention of whether or not it's an affiliate link. Just know those affiliate links don't cost you anything extra. It's just a way for you to help support my content if you decide you want to grab some of this stuff for yourself. So with that, let's get right into the setup tour. All right, so here is the story so far. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is done in my living room area. So it is a living room in the strictest sense of the word. We actually live in here. Everything we do is done in this space. So as a result, there are certain considerations I have to make when putting together a setup. And one of those considerations was spatial awareness, both in terms of how much I had to work with and who all is sitting around me, because while it's too dark to really see right now, the couch where people sit to watch our TV is directly behind me. And I want to make sure that if I'm using my computer, I'm not bothering whoever is sitting back there. So that was a large reason why the Define 7 Compact White just really stuck out to me as a case that I really wanted to have my build focused on, because this flat front panel right here is preventing all of that noise from projecting out towards the love seat back there that you, of course, can't see. But yeah, so that was a huge boon right here. And while all the parts are linked down below, I'm gonna quickly go over some of the parts that are used here for making Manic Geek content. So we have a Ryzen 7 3700X that's just running with XFR and PBO enabled, no extra tweaking or anything like that. Boosts to about 4.3 gigahertz during gaming sessions and around the 4.1, 4.2-ish range during production workloads. Cooled by a Celsius Plus S28 Prisma, again housed in the Define 7 Compact White. We have an MSI RTX 2070 Gaming Z, along with a B550 MPG Gaming Edge Wi-Fi motherboard. And then of course, powering everything is the Ion Plus 760p power supply. And now on to the setup itself. So I'm actually gonna start with sort of the center hub of the whole thing, this Tilted Nation Shadow headset stand. Because it's not just a headset stand, and I've gone over the black version of this in a previous video, but it's also got a built-in mouse bungee as well as a USB 3 hub down at the bottom here. These two USB ports are extremely important for me personally, because the way I want this setup laid out, I want it super modular and easy to address swapping out components on a regular basis. So this is actually going to be something of an endurance test for this hub here. But now that I'm getting into the swing of taking a look at more desktop peripherals in the near future, I wanted to have something that was easy for me to reach USB ports with and still keep everything clean and organized on the desk. So this headset stand definitely fit the bill in ways that other products didn't necessarily fulfill. And again, a huge thank you to Tilted Nation for supplying the Shadow for me. Again, links will be down in the video's description. Now, as far as the peripherals go, I guess we'll start with the headphones that I use. These are the Drop AKG M220s. I reviewed these a while back on the channel. You should see a link on the screen right now for them. And for being as inexpensive as these were, these only ran me like 50 bucks, but the kind of reference sound they produce, I can't imagine there being a whole lot in this price point that sounds this good. They are semi-open back, as you can see, using a mini XLR cable. The one supplied is 10 feet long, more or less. And I do not currently have a microphone anywhere on the setup, but eventually I was looking into getting one of the wireless mod mics to slap on the side of this. Now, these are not currently selling on drop.com, but I will have the link down in the video's description if you want to see these go on sale again. Request it. Now, as far as the mouse that I'm using, we've got a GWolves Skoll here. This is the sort of gray with white and gray gradient color scheme that they have for it. Chose this because it's a lightweight ergonomic mouse. I prefer an ergonomic shape when I'm using a mouse, and this particular one is about as perfect as it can get for the dimensions of my hand. I should have those up on the screen right now. But a palm grip is just absolutely perfect for me, and as light as this mouse is, with as well made as the stock paracord cable is with this mouse, literally the only reason I'm even using this bungee is purely for cable management. It has nothing to do with needing to eliminate drag because there's hardly any with this cable to begin with. I also like the super subtle RGB lighting that's just across the bottom edge of the mouse. It's not overly distracting, and it just creates a little bit of a glow along the side of the mouse on either side. Really tastefully done. I really like what they've done here. I also really like the build quality of this mouse. So for the keyboard, we have a glorious GMMK-TKL. This is, of course, a 10 keyless keyboard. We're using Kale Speed silver switches in here, which I personally highly recommend if you're looking for lightweight, responsive, gaming focused switches. These are not great for typing with, believe it or not. If you've never used a speed silver style switch before, typing gets a little inaccurate with as light as these are to depress and as early as they actuate. So this is definitely more of a gaming focused board than anything else. And I am no longer using the stock cable for this board, but I'm also not using an aviator style cable. I went with this Coiled LINDY branded cable that I found on KP Republic. This is actually not the KP Republic cable that I ordered though. That one is stuck in some sort of shipping hell somewhere. I have no idea what's going on with it. They really have done their best to try and communicate with me on what's going on with the cable, but there's certain things shipping wise that are out of their hands right now. So this one I actually picked up from an Amazon reseller. I will have both links down in the video's description. Know that if you buy this through KP Republic, there's actually a whole slew of other colorways you can get for this cable as well. And notably, it's extremely short, which was a big deal for me. I didn't want to have this massive sprawling cable that I have to bundle up on the desk just to have a keyboard plugged in. For the desk mat, we have this XL VARMILO Panda mat. This, I honestly didn't know if this was gonna look good on the desktop or not, but as it turns out, it ties in perfectly. Now, I wanted to get some close-ups here to illustrate if this was something you were interested in buying. It is listed on the mechanicalkeyboards.com website. I will have that link down in the video's description. I only spent 20 bucks on this thing, and it looks gorgeous. But it will force you to be very honest about your cleanliness on your desktop. As you can see, it's very lightly colored, and if it stains, you're gonna see it very quickly. Like there's something over here that I have to clean up. I'm not even sure what the hell that is. It looks absolutely disgusting. Point is though, it's gonna show up really easily. Thankfully, this is an extremely easy mat to clean, so no worries there with getting any stains, and just don't let them set in for very long. Another thing I want to point out is this has more blue tones to it than the images on the website would lead you to believe. The right-hand side is very much a dark gray and into lighter shades of gray gradient thing going on with these really nice subtle details in the surface of like forestry off in the distance, almost like it's obscured by fog. Really pretty. But know that if you were looking for something that's more black and white rather than something that's sort of like gray and silver with some super dark blues and bluish grays, maybe go a different direction, but I just wanted to point that out real quick with this mat. And then as far as the display goes, nothing super special here. It's being held up by an Oncron monitor arm that I found on Amazon just randomly. It's actually a really high caliber monitor arm. And then the display is just a 1440p 32-inch IPS panel, 60 hertz. Not really intended for gaming, I grant you, but it's more important that I have accurate color reproduction on this display, especially with the way I have the settings done up for my games. Having 60 hertz here is fine for right now. Eventually, I would like to have a more color accurate, high refresh rate display. If you have any suggestions for me, post them down in the comments below so I can, you know, laugh about how expensive they are. These little desktop speakers down here are nothing to write home about at all. They're just those Fantex RGB speakers that look like their cases. The lighting on them really isn't all that bright anymore after several months of use. I think I got these at CES earlier on this year. They sound adequate. They're not great. There will be links down below if you want them just because you like the way they look, but if you're looking for proper speakers, maybe look for something else, or maybe look a little upmarket if you can swing it. Now, as far as the desk itself is concerned, this is still my IKEA Skarsta that I have been using for going on about 4 years now. The desk has held up surprisingly well from when I first reviewed it on the channel. The only thing that's got going for it right now is the hand crank mechanism to adjust height. It started to make some growling noises when it gets to either the highest or lowest points of travel, so I would need to re-lubricate it. The finish on the tabletop is definitely starting to show some wear. You know, I've gone through several moves with this desk. My setup has done a lot of moving in recent history, and there's just been, because of all the movement, there's been a lot of nicks in the finish that I can't get out. And for when I am sitting, I am presently using an autonomous Kinn chair. Now, I'm not really gonna speak on this too much right now because I am in the process of reviewing it. But this has been a very enlightening product to look at so far. So definitely stay tuned for that content. You're not gonna wanna miss this review. The one thing I will say though is aesthetically, I think I sort of nailed it with this chair being integrated into this setup. Now, as far as cable management under the desk is concerned, I gotta figure out something with this cable for the extension strip that I have mounted under here. It's very thick and very heavy, and I was originally using these white sticky clamps to try and stick it underneath the desk and run it along this leg here, but it's too heavy and the adhesive on the clips wasn't really enough, so gotta find another solution for this, but I'm not overly worried about it right now, and we'll discuss that later on in the video. But for right now, suffice it to say, this is about as clean as I'm getting it for right now. Otherwise, it's actually looking really clean back here. I got this cable raceway kit on Amazon. I think it was like 25 bucks or something like that. It came with everything that was needed to cable manage up not only my setup, but to also cable manage everything for our little entertainment center nook over here, and cable manage the Mrs. Desktop setup as well. And with all the different adapters that it came with, like, there were a lot of different options that we could have gone with for either of our setups. So again, that will be linked down in the video's description. I'm a really huge fan of what it did for cable cleanup. It's not a perfect system, but it definitely looks better than not having any cable management done at all. Anyway, let's wrap this up with talking about what I do and don't like about this setup as it exists right now. So we'll start with the pros here. The layout is extremely open and clean. Not because I want it to stay like this, but because I am a content creator, and in the near future, I'll be taking a look at a lot more peripherals on the channel, and that hopefully will become a more regular thing. So I wanted to have a setup that had connectors that were easy enough to reach and conveniently located, so that, say for instance, I want to pull out this drop enter that I'm in the process of reviewing for the channel and just take a quick look at it, get a typing session in, run through a few runs of Borderlands 3 or something like that. I can just set it down on the desk, unplug this keyboard, move it out of the way, and get the other one down, and just start doing my thing. And I still have space to keep everything just out on the desk so I know where it is. Same thing, of course, goes for mice. The same thing will eventually go for headphones, but that's sort of one of those areas where this setup needs a little bit of work. The other thing I really dig about this setup is the flexibility with the sort of theme and colors that you want to use for it. Because there's just really tastefully done RGB lighting throughout this setup, I can sort of change this to fit whatever theme I want. If I want to take this desktop background and just fill in the white section with a color gradient or just a solid color or whatever, I can very easily do that and not have to change out any of the hardware here. The other nice thing is that most everything on this desk can also be had in a black color variant. So if you wanted to go the opposite direction with this build, you could well do that. I also really like the minimally invasive footprint here. While this desk is slightly larger than what a lot of you will have in your home, this is not by any stretch of the imagination a gargantuan desk. It's certainly not as big as a lot of those sort of epic setup desks that you see pictures of all over Twitter and Instagram. I've done a lot with a little here, and that was really important, especially before we got into the living space we're in right now, where space was always at a premium with us. I also really like that for the purposes of gaming and content creation, the way I do it right now, this whole thing just performs really admirably for me. As far as editing all of the audio for my videos is concerned, these headphones give me a really clean and accurate idea of what audio files I'm working with and how much work, if any, I really need to put into correcting any of the audio. The screen has good enough color accuracy for, again, the type of files and the types of videos that I'm creating, that it's really easy for me to dial in, for the most part, how things should be looking for my content. And as far as gaming is concerned, again, I don't really push my 1440p gaming to really high frame rates right now. I'm more about fidelity in my gaming than high refresh rates. So 60 Hertz isn't really hurting me for right now. I also like that ergonomically, everything is more or less dialed in to be exactly where I want it to be and how I want it to be set up. Ergonomics is critical with setting up a solid desktop environment for yourself, because as I discussed in my Myo Chair update video, I started developing some strange health concerns as a result of using a chair that wasn't really good for my body and the way all of my dimensions are set up. That is actually one thing that I can comment on in the here and now with Kinn Chair. The adjustments for this are far better for me personally than Myo Chair's adjustments were, and I now have a seating position that really makes a lot of sense with the IKEA Skarsta desk and the way I have my keyboard and mouse laid out. But it's not all wine and roses, or I guess beer and pizza depending on your budget or preferences. The fact that this is a very white setup means I have to be extremely honest with how clean I keep this desk and how clean I am just as a person in general. I've already had to wash this desk mat once before, and with the stain I pointed out earlier, I am going to have to wash it again. So if you're the type of person that doesn't enjoy that kind of maintenance and upkeep with your setup, maybe avoid going this particular direction with it. Go with a darker color palette. It's far easier to conceal stains and imperfections that way. And yeah, the RGB lighting that you would have implemented wouldn't necessarily be as intense as it is with white peripherals. The other thing that's not really so hot here is it's honestly connected to the desk itself. I'm sort of starting to outgrow this particular desk size, because one other thing that I want to start doing for the content with this channel is incorporating game streaming and gameplay footage into my content schedule, but the problem is I don't have enough space here for a secondary display to be comfortably mounted. Now, eventually, this piece of furniture that's off camera here is going to be moved out of the house, and I will have more space for this desk. But for right now, this desk isn't really It's not cutting it size-wise, and frankly, once I add another monitor arm and a second display, I'm not super comfortable with it weight-wise either. Remember, this frame, being a hand crank model, doesn't really support the kind of weight that the motorized models are able to support. So that's an upgrade in the near future that will definitely open up a lot more doors for this setup. Now, if I'm nitpicking, there are a couple of other little foibles and gripes I have with this setup, mostly surrounding, of course, the desktop speakers. I want to get something a little bit higher quality than that. Maybe even a sound bar that I can mount directly underneath the display here would work, because I actually have a mounting kit that's designed for use with VESA mounts that I can just have a sound bar mounted directly under the display and off the tabletop. But I'm not really sure if I want to go that route yet. Sound off down below if you have any suggestions for any soundbar or desktop speakers I could take a look at. Now, because of how I had to plug all of these speakers in, I actually have the desktop speakers running to motherboard sound and my headphone speakers running to the back of my display. And because I'm running HDMI on it, that means we're dealing with my RTX 2070's onboard audio processing. It actually sounds pretty good, but it's a little lacking in power. And frankly, because of how I have to wire everything in, there's not really a lot of length on this cable for it to run across the left side of me like I would prefer my cables to run. So realistically, I would like to get an amp DAC set up on this desk, not only to keep the cables a lot cleaner and better organized, but to give me better access to better quality sound for reviewing headphones and headsets in the future on this channel. I'm a little misty on the whole amp DAC thing though. I am aware of the Bad Seed Tech video that he put out for an introduction to amps and DACs, but sound off down below if you have any suggestions for any reasonably priced amp DACs that a noob like myself can get into and feel good about the purchase. Then there's my GMMK-TKL. The issue issue that I have with the keyboard body itself is the stabilizers. They are extremely rattly and noisy, and it's not from a lack of lubrication. I can see inside the stabilizers that they have been lubricated, but they just fit really loosely in the body here. I'm probably gonna have to take the board apart and see if there's something I can do about that. Apart from that, the speed silvers that I have in here feel mostly fine, but now that I've gotten used to them for a little while, I'm starting to notice that there's a bit of a grittiness to them as you're depressing the switch. It's one of those minor refinement things. I'll probably end up doing a full lube job on the switches at some point, and that will probably be another content piece for the video as well, but this is definitely not a complete project. But yeah, that's the setup story so far. Sound off in the comments below. Let me know what you think about the setup I have going here. What do you like and not like about it? And if you have any constructive suggestions for what you would do to maybe make this setup your own, maybe you'd pick a different case, maybe you'd go with, I would hope you would go with a different display if your intention is for gaming. Maybe you prefer a full-size keyboard, maybe you prefer 60%. Sound off down below. I want to hear what your take on this would be. And once again, a huge thank you to Fractal Design and Tilted Nation for helping out with their products to make this setup and build happen. Toss the video a thumbs up if you liked what you saw. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you're notified every time I upload fresh content for you, and I'll catch you all next time. So take it easy.